Hey there, retro gamers! Today we take a look at the godlike game Star Fox for the Super Famicom. Star Fox was released throughout the first half of 1993, both developed and published by Nintendo, starting off the hugely popular rail shooter franchise. Upon starting this review, I had to ask myself, how can I be different? How can this next video review be special? Something Japanese related? I mean, that's an unknown culture among Western nerds, right? Well, luckily I happen to own the Japanese version of Star Fox on the Super Famicom. Most of the reviews online are of the European or American versions, so I thought I'd try hard my hardest and do the Japanese version instead. How I came in possession of this copy is quite embarrassing on my behalf though, and not entirely on purpose. Usually when I buy retro games, it's as I come across them in the wild. For a game this outstanding though, I went straight to eBay to purchase it. Using the Australian eBay, I was only able to find American and Japanese carts. I was quite confused why there was no Australian bids, and stupidly just put it down to rotten luck. I ended up buying a Super Famicom version because I actually own a Super Famicom. It was only later though that I realised it's actually called Starwing locally because of copyright issues. Pretty poor form on my behalf, but oh well. Now I have a sweet ass Japanese version. Also, no matter what country this version comes from, I will restrain myself from making barrel roll jokes. For a better internet. How this game plays really needs no introduction, but since this video needs to fulfill its useful purpose, I'm going to tell you anyway. Basically, there is a villain named Andros who is wreaking havoc on the Lilat system with his vast army after being banished from the planet Corneria. You play Fox McCloud, who has the coolest generic action name ever, who must take down Android with his team of humanoid animal freaks. All of you pilot these prototype aircraft fighters to take down Andros and his army, basically because a big scary dog tells you to. From there you fly through various levels, varying between first and third person perspectives. These levels are either on planets or in space, and you must fight a huge variety of enemies throughout the linear levels to get to the end boss fights, which are awesome. Ultimately, you must get to Planet Venom to kick some bad guy ass, but what's really cool about this game is how it handles the difficulty settings. While in most games you get the standard easy, normal or hard settings, this game actually gives you different routes to Planet Venom based on difficulty. Playing the game on the easy routes is completely different to playing it on the harder routes, which makes the game awesomely replayable. There isn't much of an obstacle course when you're on the planet levels, maybe a building here or there, some pylons, or a huge rock. But in the space levels you're really challenged. There are asteroids to dodge, spacecrafts you can actually fly into which are full of all sorts of low poly objects that will mess you up, and more pylons. Ah, space pylons! From space! One thing I really liked about this game is the checkpoint system. It's hard enough to keep you on your toes, but still fair at the same time. You get a set amount of lives to begin with, and you earn more as you progress through the game. If you die, you go back to the start of the level, unless you find these blue ring things, which are checkpoints. If you die too many times though, it's game over. You go all the way back to the start of the game, where you get to choose the initial route of difficulty. I guess that I should go about saying that if the controls in this game were terrible, it wouldn't be the standout cult classic that it is today. They're simple, fluid, they just work. I managed to pull off some very tight maneuvers in this game, none that I previously would have thought possible with a Super Nintendo gamepad. They've really got flying through and around stuff to the T in this game. Superman 64 really should have taken notice when it was developed years later. So you have your team, but they don't really do anything at all. Sometimes they get in trouble and you have to save them, but otherwise they don't contribute to anything. If they get shot down, they don't seem to return either, which really isn't a huge loss in my opinion. Unlike the instruction manual from my last game, Top Gear Rally, which was laden with retarded dialogue, the instruction manual for Star Fox is actually quite helpful. I would recommend actually reading it, because there was a lot I didn't realise you could do until I actually bothered to read it myself. But I guess the game being in Japanese didn't really help me at all either. The most groundbreaking part about this game though are the polygons! This was the first Nintendo game on the Super Nintendo to use 3D graphics. For this game, all other Super Nintendo games were in 2D. This game cartridge was the first to have an additional code processor chip in it called the Super FX. This allowed hundreds of polygons to be drawn, creating most of the ships and obstacles. Other things though, like the asteroids and lasers, were created via scaling bitmaps. This works for the most part, but sometimes the frame rate can suffer from lag. But considering the visuals and what you're doing in this game, and considering how long ago it was developed, this really is not a problem at all. The divide between what comes up in English and what comes up in Japanese in this game is seemingly random. I guess it has something to do with how it's all translated, but I found it a bit weird nonetheless. For example, in this opening screen, everything is Japanese except for the instructions relating to what the select and start buttons do. I mean, there can't be that much of a translation gap, surely. But then again, I really know nothing about the Japanese language, so I should probably just shut up. The main thing I missed out on is what all your teammates say during the levels. At first I was worried I was missing out on vital information on how to play the game, but turns out it's all just repeated catchphrases, which as a general rule really annoy me. Since it's all in Japanese though, it looks pretty cool. So I mean, let's face it, to a Westerner like me, the Japanese letters look quite awesome. Which probably explains why there's a lot of white people getting wanky tattoos of just random Japanese letters. The more you think about it, the weirder it seems that they've chosen to use a whole lot of humanized animals as the main characters in this game. It's a bit odd for a shooting game based in space, but ultimately it is a Nintendo game, and I feel it gives it a whole heap of character. Very much like how I mentioned that the characters in Banjo-Kazooie did as well. All in all, I highly recommend this game. If you own a Super Nintendo or Super Famicom, you need this game in your collection. It's a staple. Everything about this game is done right. The gameplay is fun, the story is original, and the graphics were absolutely top of the range when it came to the bar of quality back in the day. The only negative I can think of is the need to sit on the floor and play this game like a damn kid. The cord is too damn short. I can't blame the game for this though, of course, but I really just need to complain about it somewhere. I can't initially remember how much I paid for this game since I bought it months and months ago. Have a look around eBay though, most of the bids go for between $20 and $30. I would probably expect to pay more in thrift stores though, as games like this generally fetch an unreasonable price. Unfortunately for all involved though, we've come to the end of the video. If the links actually work this time, please check out my blog and Facebook at the end of my fingers. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please don't be afraid to subscribe for more future content. It's free. Either way, catch you elsewhere.
Yeah.